Emma never imagined courage would arrive on an ordinary Tuesday night. The neon sign outside the Desert Star Diner flickered as it always did, humming above the cracked parking lot in a small Arizona town where everyone seemed to know her name, and not always kindly. Emma had learned to keep her head down, wipe the counters clean, and swallow the jokes tossed her way. Customers laughed when a group at the corner booth mocked her voice, her clothes, her quiet nature. She smiled anyway. Bills didn't wait for pride. Near closing time, the desert air cooled and the diner emptied. Emma stepped outside to take the trash, her shoes crunching on gravel. That's when she saw a woman stumble near the curb. The woman's hands shook as she tried to steady herself, then she sank to her knees. A few passers-by slowed, some snickered, others filmed on their phones. Emma's chest tightened. Fear whispered that she should stay out of it. Fear of being laughed at again, fear of doing the wrong thing. But another voice rose louder. Someone needs help. Emma dropped the trash bag and hurried over. She knelt, speaking softly, asking if the woman could hear her. The woman's skin was pale, her breathing shallow. Emma shrugged off her jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, blocking the stairs. She dialed 911 with trembling fingers, giving the location, answering questions, staying calm even as her heart raced. A low thunder rolled across the lot. Motorcycles, more than one, approached, engines growling like distant storms. One bike peeled off and skidded to a stop. A tall man jumped off, his vest marked with patches Emma recognized from headlines she avoided. His face was tight with panic as he rushed to the fallen woman. "That's my wife," he said, voice breaking. Emma met his eyes without thinking about who he was. She collapsed, Emma said steadily. "Help is on the way. She's breathing." The man knelt, taking his wife's hand, relief washing over him as he saw the jacket, the careful way Emma had positioned her. He looked up again, this time with gratitude sharp and sincere. He nodded once, a silent thank you that carried weight. Sirens cut through the night. Paramedics arrived, taking over with practiced efficiency. Emma stepped back, hands shaking now that the moment had passed. A few onlookers drifted away, bored. The man stayed, watching as his wife was lifted onto a stretcher. Before leaving, he turned to Emma again. "You did right," he said quietly. "That matters." As the bikes rolled out and the ambulance disappeared, the parking lot felt different, quieter, lighter. Emma picked up the forgotten trash bag, surprised to find her steps steadier. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel small. She had chosen courage when it counted, and though she didn't know what would follow, she sensed that the night had changed something, inside her, and beyond her, forever. The days after that night felt unreal to Emma, like the town had quietly shifted while she slept. When she returned to the Desert Star Diner, the usual whispers were gone. The corner booth that once echoed with jokes now sat strangely polite. People met her eyes, nodded, said, "Thank you," when she refilled their coffee. Emma didn't know why at first. She only knew the knot in her stomach had loosened. By the third evening, the answer arrived on two wheels. A familiar motorcycle rolled into the parking lot, alone this time. The man from that night removed his helmet and stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming softly. Conversations paused. Emma's hands froze around a mug. He approached the counter slowly, respectfully, as if not wanting to frighten her. "My wife's okay," he said. "Doctors said you kept her safe until help came." Relief washed through Emma so strongly she had to grip the counter. "I'm glad," she whispered. He set a small bundle on the counter. Flowers, simple and bright, wildly out of place in the diner's muted tones. Then he slid an envelope beside them. "For the diner," he said. "A month's bills. No fuss." Emma shook her head. "I didn't do it for." "I know," he interrupted gently. "That's why it matters." Word traveled fast in a small town. By the weekend, a line of motorcycles appeared one evening, parking neatly along the street. Not loud, not threatening, just present. When a man outside raised his voice at a waitress, it stopped immediately. When a truck circled too slowly near closing time, it moved on. No one said a word, but everyone understood. Emma felt something unfamiliar blooming inside her: safety. The bullying didn't just fade, it ended. The people who once laughed now kept their distance, or offered awkward smiles. A regular who had mocked her clothes apologized, eyes downcast. Emma accepted it, surprised by her own calm. She didn't need revenge. She had something better: respect. One quiet afternoon, Emma visited the hospital. The biker's wife, Lily, sat up in bed, color returned to her cheeks. She took Emma's hands, squeezing them with warmth. "You didn't see a patch," Lily said. "You saw a person." That sentence stayed with Emma. Weeks later, the bikes stopped coming as often. Protection had done its job. Life settled, but Emma was no longer the same woman who kept her head down. She spoke up when something felt wrong. She laughed more. She stood straighter. In a town that once defined her by weakness, Emma had rewritten her story with a single choice. Courage hadn't made her loud or fearless, it had made her true. And the shock wasn't what followed her kindness, but how far one brave moment could travel, changing lives she never meant to touch, including her own. Time moved forward, but the memory of that night stayed alive in the town like a quiet lesson everyone had learned. Emma noticed it in small moments. A customer spoke up when someone was rude. Teenagers held doors open. Even the Desert Star diner felt warmer, as if kindness had taken a permanent seat at the counter. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Arizona hills, Emma finished her shift and stepped outside. The air smelled of dust and fading heat. She paused, realizing something important. She was no longer afraid to walk alone. That simple truth made her smile. A week later, the diner hosted a small community fundraiser for the local hospital. It wasn't fancy, just pie, coffee, and handwritten signs, but the place filled up. Families came, truck drivers came, and quietly, respectfully, a few bikers arrived too, sitting in the back, keeping to themselves. No one complained, no one stared. The town had learned that labels rarely tell the full story. Emma worked the room, confident now, joking lightly, her laughter genuine. Halfway through the night, Lily walked in, fully recovered, her hair tied back, eyes bright. She hugged Emma without hesitation. Cameras flashed. Not from phones this time, but from the local newspaper. "You started something good," Lily said softly. Emma shook her head. "I just helped." "That's how it always starts," Lily replied. The article ran the next morning. Local woman's courage inspires community. It didn't mention gangs or fear. It talked about empathy, quick thinking, and ordinary bravery. Emma read it twice, hands trembling, not from nerves, but from disbelief. For the first time, her name meant something good beyond those walls. Opportunities followed. The diner owner offered Emma a supervisor role. A community group invited her to speak, not about trauma, but about choosing action over silence. Emma almost said no. Old habits whispered that she wasn't the right person. But courage, once awakened, doesn't sleep easily. At the meeting, Emma stood in front of strangers and told the truth. "I was scared," she said. "I still get scared." Courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just stepping forward when you want to step back. People listened. Outside, life went on. The bikers rode their routes. Lily volunteered at the hospital. The town felt steadier, as if a crack had been repaired. Emma understood now that bravery isn't about being fearless, it's about refusing to let fear decide. One night, locking up the diner, Emma caught her reflection in the glass. She saw the same woman, same face, same hands, but something deeper had changed. She trusted herself. The shock that followed her choice wasn't protection or praise. It was transformation. A bullied woman had chosen courage once, and in doing so, discovered she was never as powerless as she had been told. And that lesson, quietly passed from person to person, became the town's strongest bond. Months passed, and the Arizona town settled into a new rhythm, but echoes of Emma's courage still shaped everyday life. What surprised her most wasn't the respect she received, it was the responsibility that came with it. People now looked to her in moments of tension, as if calm could be borrowed from someone who had once stood firm. One late evening, a heated argument broke out near the diner. Two men shouted near the pumps, anger rising fast. In the past, Emma would have stayed inside, heart racing. This time, she stepped outside, not to confront, but to ground the moment. Her voice was steady, asking them to take a breath, reminding them families lived nearby. Others joined in. The argument faded, replaced by embarrassed silence. Emma realized courage grows when shared. Later that week, Lily invited Emma to a small gathering at a community center. It wasn't organized by bikers or officials, just neighbors. Teachers, nurses, mechanics, and a few riders sat in a loose circle, coffee in hand. Stories flowed. People talked about moments they wished they'd acted differently, times they'd been afraid to help. No one judged. The room felt honest. A man near the door spoke last. "I always thought strength was about looking tough," he said. "Turns out it's about showing up." Emma felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but recognition. The diner became a quiet hub for these changes. A notice board filled with flyers, volunteer shifts, food drives, blood donation dates. Emma helped organize them, surprised by how natural leadership felt when rooted in care rather than control. She wasn't louder than anyone else, she just listened well. One afternoon, a teenage girl lingered after her meal, tracing circles on the counter. "They pick on me at school," she said softly. Emma didn't offer grand advice. She shared her own story. Not the headlines, but the fear, the choice, the relief afterward. The girl left standing a little straighter. The bikers came less often now, their presence no longer needed as a shield. When they did appear, it was for pie or coffee, helmets tucked under arms, nods exchanged like any other regulars. The town had learned a deeper truth. Protection isn't about intimidation, it's about accountability. On a warm night, Emma closed the diner and walked home beneath a sky full of stars. She thought about how one decision had unfolded into many, how courage had multiplied through ordinary people choosing to care. The shock, she realized, wasn't the change itself, but how simple it had been to start. Emma understood now that bravery doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence. It asks for humanity. And once given, it leaves a mark, not just on a moment, but on a place, shaping how people treat one another long after the engine's quiet and the lights dim. In that town, courage had become a shared language, and Emma was no longer just a survivor of cruelty, but a quiet architect of kindness. A year after that unforgettable night, the Desert Star Diner celebrated its anniversary with fresh paint, new booths, and a small sign near the door that read, "Everyone is welcome here." Most customers didn't know why it mattered. Emma did. She stood behind the counter, older somehow, not in years, but in certainty. Life hadn't become perfect. Bad days still came. People still disagreed. But fear no longer ruled her choices, and that changed everything. That evening, the diner filled with familiar faces. The owner gave a short speech, thanking the staff and the community. Then, unexpectedly, he turned to Emma. "This place changed because one person reminded us what decency looks like," he said simply. There was no applause at first, just a deep, respectful silence. Then claps rose, steady and sincere. Emma felt her cheeks warm, but she didn't shrink away. She smiled and nodded, accepting the moment without embarrassment. Courage had taught her that being seen wasn't something to fear. Later, as the crowd thinned, motorcycles rolled in, not many, just a few. Lily and her husband entered together, relaxed, no urgency in their steps. They shared pie like old friends. Before leaving, Lily hugged Emma tightly. "You gave me my life back," Lily said. Emma shook her head. "You gave me mine." Outside, a group of teenagers laughed near the parking lot. One dropped a wallet. Before Emma could move, another picked it up and returned it. Small acts, quiet choices, proof that something lasting had taken root. As the diner lights dimmed, Emma locked the door and paused, listening to the stillness. She thought back to who she had been, the woman who endured cruelty in silence, believing she was alone. She wished she could tell that version of herself what she knew now, that courage doesn't erase fear, it walks beside it. The town hadn't become famous. No documentaries came, no grand speeches were carved into stone. But something better had happened. People learned to look at one another first as human beings, not labels. And that lesson spread in ways no one could measure. Emma began mentoring quietly, helping new employees, listening to neighbors, showing up when it mattered. She didn't seek recognition. She understood now that real impact often whispers. As she walked home under the wide Arizona sky, Emma felt peace settle in her chest. The shock that followed her brave choice wasn't power or protection, it was purpose. She had found her voice, and in doing so, helped others find theirs. Courage had started as a single step forward on a dark night. Now, it lived on in 100 small moments, carried by ordinary people choosing kindness again and again. And that, Emma knew, was how real change stayed alive.